What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Templar DPS. So the Stamina Templar in this patch is actually not that bad. It is no longer the worst Stamina DPS in the game. That spot has now been taken by the Stamina Warden. Stamina Templars actually are in a pretty decent spot. They are not top of the line, so they're still being beat out by Stamina Necromancers and Stamina Sorcerers, but Stamina Templars are actually in a really good spot right now as compared to where they have been in the past. Part of that is the fact that they did change Power of Delight, so the secondary hit, the copy damage, can now crit, so that's a pretty big DPS buff as well. DPS buff in general. And then you also have the fact that Ritual Retribution scales off of now weapon damage and your highest offensive stats, which it used to do in Scalebreaker, but now I believe it was buffed a little bit in Dragonhold, so it's even stronger than ever on a Stamina Templar because you have just so much weapon damage as a Stamina DPS. So those two things combined, along with the fact that Jabs really hasn't changed too much in terms of a spammable, has pretty much made Templars more or less probably third best Stamina DPS right now, maybe third or fourth, maybe somewhere in that ballpark range. So again, they are being beat by Sorks and Necros, but Stamina Templars are in a much better place than they have been in the past. So like the rest of our build videos, we will not be going over any gear. That is part of the Stamina DPS gear video, which is popping up in the upper right hand corner right now. So if you're interested in the gear that I am running, I recommend pausing this video, checking out the Stamina gear video, and then coming back here. We will be discussing just the skills we're going to be using, as well as the rotation itself. And of course, we'll close off with a 21 million dummy parse, so you guys can get an idea of the amount of DPS that this build can pull in relation to other builds that I have on my channel. So let's go ahead and get started here with skills. No idea what this bar is here for. It's probably some add-on. But for your front bar, very simple. So Stamina Templars actually have a very simple rotation. At the very least, if we want to pull the most amount of DPS. So we have Biting Jabs, Power of the Light, and then we have Camouflaged Hunter, or any fighter skilled ability, Rearming Barbed Trap, and Ring of Preservation, or any other fighter skilled ability. And then we have Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front bar here. Then on the back bar, we have Ritual of Retribution, Poison Injection, Arrow Barrage, Barbed Trap again, Blazing Spear, so that way we can maintain our Piercing Spear passive, and Ballista. So you'll notice that out of all of these, we will only be using mainly Jabs, Power of the Light, and Trap on the front bar. On the back bar, we're going to be using Retribution, say Ritual, Poison Injection, and Arrow Barrage. Now, people have told me that it's actually better to completely drop Poison Injection, run Endless Hail with a Maelstrom Bow, and then put another fighter skilled ability here on the back bar. But I personally haven't tried that out yet. I have been told by people who have main Stamplars, the very few that still exist, that they've been doing better DPS with the Maelstrom with Endless Hail and dropping Poison Injection than running this. And the rationale behind that is you save a global cooldown, so you get an extra jabs off, which also helps proc Burning Light under the Aedric Spearline, which helps does additional DPS. So again, that is an option there. So you would just drop Poison Injection, use Endless Hail, use a Maelstrom Bow on the back bar, and just replace that now empty spot on the back bar with the Fighter Skilled ability, just so you have some additional weapon damage on the back bar. But this is the build that we're going to be going with today. Now you have noticed that we have a lot of flex spots here. So it's kind of one of the advantages of Stamplars. Because we have very few skills that we must run, we have a lot of flex spots here, especially on our front bar. So a couple of different skills to run here. So in terms of actual Templar abilities, the only one I want to mention is going to be Repentance, which might be useful in trash fights. Basically restores stamina to you for every corpse nearby. So that's always useful to have in trash fights, so when you can pretty much burn through as much stamina as you want and then just hit Repentance and get a good chunk of stamina back. So that's always good to have on hand. It's also really useful with bosses that spawn a lot of ads. That way you can keep on trucking with your additional stamina. So definitely an ability you might want to consider picking up, especially on trash fights. Beyond that, though, under the dual wield line, Deadly Cloak is not bad, so you put this on the front bar here. You will see a slight DPS drop from running Deadly Cloak, as well as a drop in your sustain, because now you're adding in another ability you have to cast every 10 seconds. But it does give you that major evasion for 10 seconds, which does improve your overall survivability. A lot of attacks in this game, especially in Trials, do count as AoE attacks, and so this just gives you a cost reduction of 25%. So pretty decent additional mitigation, and you're not really giving up that much damage by running Deadly Cloak either. We already talked about potentially swapping out Endless Hail in place of Arrow Barrage here if you're going to want to run the Maelstrom Bow. Ballista here is going to be one of our primary ultimates that we use. You can use either Ballista or Dawnbreaker. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. I have people told me that Flawless Dawnbreaker is better. I've used Ballista. And I have pulled a little bit higher with Flawless Dawnbreaker, so we're usually actually going to be using Dawnbreaker as our primary ultimate here. You do want to open with the Ballista, though. We'll talk about that when we go over the rotation. If you're running War Machine, though, you can run Empowering Sweep on either the front or the back bar. Typically, you're going to want it on the back bar, so that way you at least maintain the 3% additional weapon damage from slotting Flawless Dawnbreaker. You would just have Empowering Sweep on the back bar here, and then you would just swap cancel or just cast it on cooldown, however you'd like. But that would be reserved only if you're running War Machine here, just because it costs 71 ultimate, so it's a lot cheaper than running Dawnbreaker with War Machine. Beyond that, not much else here. If you need some additional sustain, you can always run Soul Trap. It still does okay damage, still does pretty decent damage if you're running the Consuming for single target. If you're running Soul Splitting, you get some additional cleave damage as well, but Jabs does a lot of cleave damage already, so you don't necessarily need to run Soul Splitting Trap. But if you're finding yourself having difficulty sustaining, then you can run Soul Splitting Trap. Speaking of sustain, you can also run Restoring Focus if you are struggling with sustain, so this gives you some additional stamina back every second. For this particular build, I did not have any trouble sustaining, and that is with running Poison Injection. So if you're running the Endless Hail with Maelstrom Bow, you would have a little bit better sustain, because you're basically using a jabs instead of a Poison Injection, which is a little bit cheaper. But if for whatever reason you are running out of stamina in fights, you can run Restoring Focus. Another advantage of Restoring Focus is it also gives you your Major Resolve bonuses. So if you're not getting that already from some other source, like for example Expansive Frost Cloak on a Warden Healer, then you can get it here. So that just helps out with the overall survivability. Fighter's Guild, any of these skills are fine to slot. You're not really going to be using them. Camouflage Hunter is beneficial because if you deal critical damage on a flank, you get Minor Berserk. So basically 90 degrees all the way to behind the enemy. That's considered the flank. You'll get that Minor Berserk. So pretty useful in certain situations. Ring of Preservation gives you minor protection and a heal. So really nice mitigation along with the heal. When you calculate it out, it actually ends up being a pretty decent heal as a stamina DPS, especially when you have Major Brutality and all that stuff going. Then Silver Shards is an okay. It's not really great, but it's a decent kind of AoE spamble if you want to use that. You can also use Silver Leash if you want to pull things in, help out your tank, pull adds in. I personally wouldn't recommend doing that though, because that might mess up stacks on your that your tank might be trying to create. But beyond that, not much else here. Shadow Silk under the Undaunted line for the Black Widow synergy if you want to help provide some additional Major Slayer uptime for people who are running Lokkestiiz. And if you need another self-heal, you can always run Vigor. I highly recommend running Echoing Vigor instead of Resolving Vigor. The heal per second done by one Resolving Vigor is going to be higher than one Echoing Vigor. However, Echoing Vigor does stack with other Echoing Vigors. So if you have 3 or 4 stamina DPS, you all are running Echoing Vigor. The amount of healing per second done, if you get hit by 4 of those, I should say 3 of those and your own, is definitely going to be higher than running Resolving Vigor on all 4 of those stamina DPS. So I highly recommend picking up Echoing Vigor as your morph if you're running Vigor here. And that's pretty much it for all the skills. So again, the staples on your front bar are going to be Jabs, Power of the Light, Barbed Trap, and Dawnbreaker. On the back bar, the must-haves are going to be Ritual Retribution, and then either Arrow Barrage or Endless Hail, depending on if you want to run the Masters or Maelstrom. If you're running the Masters, you also need to run Poison Injection. If you're running the Maelstrom, you don't need Poison Injection. And then Flex, you do want to have Blazing Spear on the back bar here for the Burning Light, not Burning Light, Piercing Spear passive here. You could theoretically put any spear ability here. So, for example, Radiant Ward, if you want a damage shield for whatever reason. But Blazing Spear is typically what people go with, just because it's pretty easy, and if you need to give out synergies, you don't have a like Templar Healer, for example, you're able to do that. And then Ballista can be swapped out for empowering sweeps if you're running War Machine. So let's go ahead and talk about the rotation here. First things first, I will place the dummy over here for the test later, and I'll reset it so it has full health. And we'll talk about the rotation here with the 6 million dummy. So the rotation itself is pretty straightforward, very simple. I would say it's probably as close to static as you can possibly get in this game. One of the advantages of running Power of the Light now is you don't need to worry about getting it every 6 seconds now, because the Minor Fracture, Minor Breach benefit now lasts for 9 seconds. That was changed in a previous patch. So you don't need to run it every 6 seconds now. So if it runs out for 2 seconds or so, that's fine, because you're still getting that Minor Fracture, Minor Breach going, as that buff lasts for 9 seconds. So your rotation pretty much looks like this. I'm going to do Hail, Retribution, Poison Injection, Power of the Light, and then just jabs while you're waiting for stuff to happen. Oh, I hit the wrong button there. I used Camouflage Hunter instead of Power of the Light. So your back rotation is pretty much always going to be Hail or Arrow Barrage if you're running that, and Ritual Retribution and Poison Injection. And then you just use Power of the Light whenever you need it. The most important thing to know about Power of the Light is that in order to get the second hit to occur, you actually have to let it run completely out. So if you recast it early, you actually won't get the additional hit. For example, I think the best way to do it is actually to put on combat numbers real fast. Alright, so for example, alright, so we got that going. So here is Power of the Light. That's the first hit. And you can see here that I'm only getting that first hit going. I'm not getting the second hit when I'm recasting it early. You might be saying, well, you're not doing any damage, so of course you're not going to get any copied damage. But there you saw Velidreth hit, and I still didn't get any reflected damage. So just to kind of re-emphasize that for you guys here. You can see here I only hit for 49.55, so I actually have to let it run completely out here to get the actual reflected damage. So the most important thing with running Power of the Light is to let it run completely out. Recast it early, you lose out on that second hit. So that is going to be... That's pretty much it for the rotation. Like I said, very simple, probably the closest to a static rotation as you can get on a stamina DPS. The back bar rotation pretty much remains constant throughout, so if you're running Poison Injection, you do Hail, Ritual Retribution, Poison Injection. If you're not running Poison Injection, then obviously just Hail, Ritual. Ultimate, if you have it. I should say we're not running Ballista as our ultimate on the front bar here. So if you don't have Poison Injection, obviously you're just going to drop that entirely. And then on the front bar, it's just Power of the Light, jabs, 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 and then Power of the Light or Rearming Trap if you need to run that, and then just go back to your back bar. Really simple, really straightforward, and like I said, opens up a lot of flexibility because you have a lot of flex spots here. You're only really running, at most, you're running only 6 skills. If you want to include ultimate, 7 skills. So pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and do our 21 million. Let me parse here. I need to reset the dummy because probably Ritual Retribution was hitting the dummy when we're doing that. And I will try to narrate throughout the parse as needed. So I will mention here that we open up with Ballista and then we use Dawnbreaker afterwards as our ultimate throughout the entire fight. So let's go ahead and get started. Let it run completely out. Now I am running Poison Injection here. So I will have a little bit fewer Power of the Light casts than if I were to not run Poison Injection. if Power of the Light and your Hail is about to run out like this, I'd say probably prioritize Hail over Power of the Light, because again, you do have 9 seconds on that debuff. Remember, the most important thing is to make sure you let Power of the Light run completely out before you renew it. I'm gonna recast Power of the Light here. Again, really straightforward. If you're running Trap on both bars, doesn't really matter which bar you cast Trap on. Now, I am running Lokkestiiz on my front bar, so I have to make sure to use my synergies while I'm on my front bar. This is something you should keep in mind if you're running Lokkestiiz front bar. And then an execute, you don't really change anything. You don't have an execute ability as a Templar, so you just keep on jabbing away. More jabs you get off, the better, generally speaking. You weave properly, game. Oh, I've been sitting on my ultimate. Still not used to running Dawnbreaker as my ultimate, so that's why I was sitting on that. We're going to renew our dots one more time. But from here on out, it's just straight jabs. Alright, there we go. That's our parse. We were within range for us to hit that dummy with Retribution, so we're not going to be pulled out of combat just yet. So it's going to be a little bit of a delay for our combat report, but wait for it. There we go. Alright, so we pulled an actual 97.2k. If you want to round up and be a little bit generous, 79.3k. So again, when you compare it to something like a Stamina Warden, Stam DKs, they're doing a little bit better than Stamina Wardens. They're about even with Stam DKs, but Stam Sorks, Stam Necromancers are beating out Stamina Templars. Stamina Nightblades as well are doing a little bit better than Templars, but Templars are no longer bottom of the barrel. So they're actually in a pretty good spot right now. With jabs being their primary spamble, they have pretty decent cleave damage. Retribution gives them a pretty good amount of DPS, plus it also provides the Purify synergy, so that helps out as well. And then of course you have Power of the Light, which provides that Minor Fracture, Minor Breach, which, let's check our Power of the Light uptime. So 71 is Power of the Light, but we're looking for Minor Fracture. I don't see here, so I might actually see it anywhere. So it might not actually be listed here because it might just automatically be there. Unless it is Power of the Light, in which case 71% uptime on Power of the Light. So I could be doing better on this. Obviously, I don't really play Standard Templar too much, so there's definitely a lot of cleaning up I can do with my rotation here. But that's pretty much it for this build video. Hopefully you guys found this informative. If you guys have any questions about the build, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Hope you guys found this informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.